Captain Yun-tae stood at the observation deck of Council Station, watching the stars through the massive viewport. He had spent 20 years of his life here, negotiating peace between species that could barely stand to breathe the same air. 20 years of settling trade disputes, preventing wars, and making sure the thousands of daily operations ran smoothly. 20 years of being treated like a servant. The station hummed around him, a floating city that housed representatives from 47 different species. It was humanity's engineering that kept the life support running. Human technicians who fixed the gravity generators when they failed. Human diplomats who mediated the constant arguments between proud alien races. But none of them saw it that way. To them, humans were just there. Like furniture. Like tools that maintained themselves. Yun-tae touched the datapad in his pocket. The message had come 3 hours ago, encrypted and direct from Earth. Operation Withdrew. He had read it 5 times, and each time he felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because the burden would finally lift. Sadness because it meant they had failed. Ambassador Ji-won appeared beside him, her reflection ghostly in the viewport. She was younger than Hyun-tae, but she carried the same weariness in her eyes. Every human who worked in council space had that look eventually. They voted against us again, she said quietly. 42-5. The security presidium seat goes to the Vexillian Confederacy instead. Hyun-tae nodded. He had expected it. Humanity had applied for a presidium seat 7 times in 83 years. 7 times they had been rejected. The council species saw humans as useful, but not worthy of real power. They maintained the systems, yes. They solved problems, certainly, but they were not special. They were not advanced. They were just there. The Vexillians can't even operate their own waste recycling systems, Ji-won continued, anger creeping into her voice. We've had to send technicians to their homeworld 12 times this year alone, but they get the presidium seat. It doesn't matter now, Hyun-tae said. He pulled out the datapad and handed it to her. We're leaving. Ji-won read the message, her eyes widening. All of us? Everyone? Every human in council space. 72 hours. We take nothing that isn't ours. We damage nothing. We say nothing except goodbye, and then we go home. They'll never allow it. They can't stop it. We're not prisoners. We came here as partners. We're leaving as free beings. Hyun-tae turned from the viewport. Start spreading the word, quietly, no announcements. Just person to person. Every human engineer, every technician, every soldier, every diplomat. We have 3 days. The withdrawal began like a whisper. In the engineering bays, human workers finished their shifts and didn't return. In the medical centers, human doctors completed their surgeries and transferred their patients to alien staff. In the communication hubs, human operators trained their replacements on systems the aliens had never bothered to learn. Admiral Minho commanded the human fleet that patrolled the council borders. 23 ships, not large by galactic standards, but efficient and well-maintained. He received his orders and began the quiet repositioning. One by one, his ships pulled back from their patrol routes. The alien species barely noticed. After all, what were a few human ships among thousands? In the station cafeteria, Hyun-tae watched a group of Keltharian diplomats laughing over their meal. They were celebrating the presidium vote, toasting their victory over humanity's presumptuous application. One of them caught Hyun-tae's eye and raised his glass mockingly. Hyun-tae simply nodded and looked away. Let them celebrate. They would understand soon enough. The council speaker, a crystalline being named Vethrax, didn't even acknowledge the human departures at first. When his aide mentioned that several human staff members had resigned, Vethrax waved the appendage dismissively. Let them go. We can find replacements easily enough. Humans were never essential to our operations. The aide, a nervous creature with 6 eyes, hesitated. Speaker, the humans maintain most of our critical systems. The translation network, the life support regulators, I'm aware of what they do, Vethrax interrupted. Menial tasks. Any species with basic technical knowledge can handle them. In fact, this presents an opportunity. We can train our own people properly instead of relying on outsiders. The aide said nothing more. What could he say? The speaker had made his decision. On the second day, more humans departed. The flow was steady but not rushed. They packed their belongings, said polite goodbyes to those who bothered to listen, and boarded transport ships heading for the border. The alien species who worked alongside them seemed puzzled but not concerned. Some even seemed relieved. The humans were always so serious, always worried about details and procedures. Perhaps the station would be more relaxed without them. By the third day, the departures were impossible to ignore. Entire sections of the station were being vacated. The engineering bay had only 3 humans left from a staff of 40. The agricultural dome, which had been managed by human botanists, now sat with hastily trained alien replacements who looked confused by the equipment. Ambassador Jiwan prepared her final statement. She stood in the council chambers, a place where she had spent countless hours arguing for peace, for fairness, for cooperation. The chamber was only half full. Many council members hadn't bothered to attend. They didn't think this was important. Members of the Galactic Council, Jiwan began, her voice steady. Humanity came to you 83 years ago seeking partnership. We came with open hands and hopeful hearts. We wanted to learn from you, to grow with you, to build a better future together. Some of the aliens were listening. Most were checking their data pads or talking among themselves. We found something different, Jiwan continued. We found that you needed servants, not partners. You needed workers, not equals, and we provided that service faithfully for over 8 decades. We maintained your systems, mediated your conflicts, solved your problems. We did it hoping that one day you would see us as we saw you, as equals. Vetherax made a sound of impatience. If you're finished with the dramatic speech, I am finished, Jiwan said quietly. Humanity is withdrawing from council space. Every human will be gone within the hour. We wish you well. We truly do. May you find the peace and prosperity you sought without us. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she heard laughter. Someone made a joke about humans being too emotional. Someone else said good riddance. Let them laugh, Jiwan thought. Let them laugh now. The last human transport ship left Council Station at precisely the 72-hour mark. Admiral Minho's fleet formed an escort, guiding the civilian vessels safely to human space. Behind them, Council Station continued its rotation around the neutron star. Lights blazing, systems running. Everything seemed fine. Hyun-Tai stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the station shrink in the view screen. He felt Jiwan come stand beside him. Do you think they'll understand? She asked. Eventually, Hyun-Tai replied. When the systems start failing. When the conflicts escalate. When they realize that all those menial tasks were actually holding their civilization together. He paused. But by then it will be too late. Do you feel guilty? Hyun-Tai considered the question. No, we gave them 83 years. We gave them everything we had. They chose not to value it. That's not our fault. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving council space behind. In their wake, they left a civilization that didn't yet know it was dying. 3 months passed and Council Station began to rot from the inside. Counselor Ixthar noticed it first. He was a mantis-like being with compound eyes that missed very little. The air in the eastern sectors smelled wrong. Not bad exactly, just wrong. The recycling systems were off by a few percentage points. Small thing. Barely noticeable. But Ixthar had been on the station for 15 years, and he knew when something was not right. He went to engineering to report it. The Keltharian supervisor looked at his datapad and frowned. The filters need cleaning, the supervisor said. The humans used to do it every week. We've been doing it every month. Should be fine. But the smell, I'll add it to the schedule. The supervisor waved him away. Ixthar left, but the worry stayed with him. Every week the humans used to clean those filters. Every week for 83 years. Now once a month. He did the math in his head. That was a 75% reduction in maintenance. What else was being maintained at 75% less frequency? In the southern arm of the station, a trade dispute exploded into violence. The Moth Collective and the Vixilian Confederacy had been arguing over mineral rights in a border system for decades. The argument was old, familiar, manageable. Usually, a human mediator would sit with both sides, go through the details, find a compromise nobody loved but everyone could accept. This time, there was no mediator. The Vexilians sent warships. The Moths responded. 15 ships were destroyed in the first engagement. 234 beings died. The council met in emergency session, and it took them 6 hours just to agree on what language to use for the peace proposal. The humans had maintained the translation software. Without regular updates, idioms were being translated literally. Meanings were being lost. and insults were being accidentally inserted where none existed. By the time they sent the peace proposal, 3 more ships had been destroyed. High Arbiter Sora watched from her remote station on the edge of Council space. She was the only human who had stayed behind. Not out of loyalty to Earth, but out of loyalty to the idea of the Council. She had believed in what it could be, even if it wasn't there yet. Now she watched it crumble and felt her heart break. She sent an encrypted message to human space. They don't understand what they've lost. They're dying and don't know why. The message went unanswered. On Council Station, the problems multiplied. The quantum communication network started having delays. Messages that should arrive instantly were taking minutes, sometimes hours. The Keltharian technicians couldn't find the problem. They checked the hardware, ran diagnostics, consulted the manuals. Everything looked fine on paper. What they didn't know was that the human engineers had been manually calibrating the quantum entanglement every 6 hours. It was a tiny adjustment, barely worth mentioning, something the humans had done so routinely that they never even logged it. Without those adjustments, the network slowly drifted out of sync. Trade routes started failing. Ships were arriving at stations to find no one expecting them. No berths available, no cargo handlers ready. The scheduling system had been managed by human logistics coordinators who understood the complex web of dependencies. Now the system ran on automation alone. And automation didn't account for the 1,000 small variables that made the difference between efficiency and chaos. A food shipment meant for a frontier colony was rerouted to a diplomatic function. The colony went hungry while dignitaries ate exotic fruits. When the mistake was discovered, the colony representatives demanded answers. The council opened an investigation. The investigation took 3 weeks. By then, 2 more shipments had been misrouted. Daehyun had been the last human technician to leave Council Station. He had spent an extra week training his replacement, a well-meaning Quellan who seemed confident he understood the systems. Now 3 months later, Daehyun received an emergency transmission. The Quellan's voice was panicked. The primary reactor is fluctuating. I've tried everything in the manual. It keeps dropping below safe levels. I need your help. Daehyun stared at the message for a long time. He remembered his training sessions, remembered explaining the reactor maintenance procedures. The Quellan had nodded, said he understood. But understanding the procedure and understanding the system were different things. He deleted the message without responding. It hurt, but he had to. If he went back, if any human went back, it would just delay the inevitable. The Council needed to learn to stand on its own, or it needed to fall. Security Chief Jinho sat in his office on Earth's orbital station, reviewing reports from the border. Ships were coming from Council space, not invasion forces. Refugee ships, small vessels packed with civilians fleeing the growing chaos. They came to human space because they had nowhere else to go. What do we do with them? His deputy asked. Jinho looked at the scans. He saw families, children, people who had never voted to reject humanity's Presidium application, who had never laughed at human diplomats, who had just lived their lives and now those lives were falling apart. Let them in, he said. Screen them for security, but let them in. These people aren't our enemy. Their leaders were. The deputy nodded and left. Jinho went back to his reports. More ships were coming. This was just the beginning. On Council Station, Speaker Vethrax finally realized something was wrong. It took him 3 months, but the evidence became impossible to ignore. The station life support was failing in sections. The trade network was collapsing. 4 different wars had broken out across Council space. The military couldn't coordinate responses because their combined operations protocols had been written by human tactical advisors. He called an emergency council meeting. This time everyone attended. The chamber was full of worried faces and agitated voices. We need to address the human situation, Vethrax announced. What situation? A Vexillian delegate demanded. They left. Good riddance. The situation, Vethrax said coldly, is that every system they maintained is failing. Every conflict they mediated is erupting. Every function they performed is collapsing. We are facing a cascading systems failure across all of Council space. The chamber fell silent. That's impossible, someone said. They were just maintenance workers. Just technicians, Ixthar stood up. He had been compiling data, running numbers, tracking the failures. They weren't just anything. They were the foundation. Look at the statistics. Before humans left, We averaged 3 minor conflicts per year in council space. In 3 months, we've had 15, and 4 have escalated to open warfare. Before they left, station maintenance issues were resolved within hours. Now they take days or weeks. Before they left, the trade network had 99.7% efficiency. Now it's at 73% and dropping. We can fix this, Vethrak said, but his voice lacked confidence. We hire new people. We train them. We adapt. With respect, Speaker, we don't have time. Ixthar brought up a holographic display. These are projections based on current failure rates. If trends continue, we have 18 months before critical systems collapse completely. We're not talking about inconvenience. We're talking about life support failures, food distribution breakdowns, complete communication blackouts. We're talking about the end of the council. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some wanted to hire other species to replace humans. Some wanted to force humans to return. Some insisted the problems were being exaggerated. Bethrax made a decision. Send a delegation to human space. Offer them whatever they want, credits, resources, technology, a presidium seat. Just get them back. Admiral Minho met the council delegation at the human border. His flagship was small compared to some council vessels, but it was well armed and its crew was alert. The delegation's ship, by contrast, looked worn. Just 3 months and already the maintenance was slipping. The lead delegate, a Keltharian named Rothan, appeared on the view screen. Admiral Minho, we come to negotiate humanity's return to council space. We are prepared to offer significant incentives. No, Minho said simply. You haven't heard our offer. I don't need to. You made your position clear when you rejected our application for basic equality. You made it clear when you laughed at our diplomats. You made it clear every single day for 83 years. Now you want us to save you? Minho leaned forward. Find another servant species. This isn't about servitude. This is about cooperation. Cooperation happens between equals. You never saw us as equals. You needed workers and we filled that role. Now you need saviors and you expect us to fill that role too. But we're done filling your needs. We have our own civilization to build. The screen went dark. The delegation returned to council space with the worst news possible. Humanity would not help. Not for credits. Not for technology. Not for anything. Sora watched this from her remote station and felt tears on her cheeks. She had hoped humanity would be better than the council, that they would rise above the pettiness and help despite the insults. But she understood their choice. Sometimes you had to let someone fall before they learned to stand. She just wished so many innocent people didn't have to fall with them. 8 months after humanity withdrew, council space was burning. Dr. Yunji sat in her laboratory on Mars, analyzing data from long-range sensors. The numbers were worse than she had projected. 40,000 beings dying every day from preventable causes, systems failures, food shortages, medical breakdowns, wars. It was like watching a body die of organ failure, one system shutting down after another, each collapse triggering the next. She prepared her report for the Human Congress, though she already knew what it would say. The Galactic Council would completely collapse within 3 years. Maybe less. On the border stations, Security Chief Jinho dealt with a different kind of crisis. The refugee ships kept coming. Hundreds now, then thousands. Families fleeing wars that human diplomats would have prevented. Engineers escaping stations where life support was failing. Merchants whose trade routes had collapsed. They came to human space because it was stable, because it was safe, because humanity had built something that worked. Jinho approved asylum requests and tried not to think about the millions who couldn't escape. His job was to protect human interests, but those desperate faces on the view screens haunted him. These weren't the arrogant council members who had dismissed humanity. These were teachers and farmers and children who had simply been born in the wrong place at the wrong time. How many can we take? His deputy asked. As many as we can feed and house, Jinho replied. Screen them, process them, but don't turn them away. We're not the council. We don't abandon people who need help. The deputy looked relieved. Many of the security staff had been uncomfortable turning away genuine refugees. Yes, sir. In council space, the collapse accelerated. The Vexillian Confederacy invaded the Moth Collective's border systems, a conflict that humanity had kept cold for 40 years through careful diplomacy and scheduled mediation sessions. Without those sessions, without human mediators to remind both sides of their shared interests, old hatreds boiled over. The war spread quickly. The Moths called on their allies. The Vexillians did the same. Within weeks, 12 species were involved in direct combat. The Council's combined military response was a disaster. Ships from different species couldn't coordinate. Communication protocols were incompatible. Tactical doctrine varied wildly. Human advisors had spent decades building bridges between these different military traditions. Now those bridges were gone, and the fleets flew in chaos. Merchant Captain Nari ventured into Council space against everyone's advice. She was a traitor, and she needed to see the situation for herself. What she found horrified her. Stations with entire sections in darkness, life support maintaining minimal function. Colonies abandoned because supply ships no longer came. Markets empty because the agricultural logistics network had collapsed. She landed on a station that had once bustled with activity. Now it was a ghost town. The few remaining inhabitants looked thin and desperate. An old Keltharian shopkeeper recognized her human features. "Please," he begged. "Do you have food? Medicine, anything?" Nari gave him what supplies she could spare. "What happened here?" "The supply ship stopped coming 3 months ago. The Council said they would send emergency rations. They never came. We sent messages asking for help. No response. I think they've forgotten about us." "They haven't forgotten," Nari said quietly. "They just don't know how to help anymore." She returned to human space with footage and testimony. The Human Congress watched in silence as she showed them stations failing, colonies dying, civilizations regressing. One counselor, a young woman named Hana, turned away from the screen, unable to watch. "We did this," someone whispered. "No," Yunji said firmly. "They did this to themselves. We offered them partnership. They chose servitude instead. We left to preserve our dignity. That was the right choice. But these people," Hana gestured at the screen where a child's face stared out with empty eyes. "These people didn't choose anything. They're dying for decisions their leaders made." The chamber fell silent. It was the core question that no one wanted to face. Were they responsible for people who had never wronged them? Were they obligated to save a civilization that had treated them with contempt? In the ruins of Council Station, Speaker Vethrax sent another message to human space. His pride was gone now, burned away by 8 months of failure. He had watched his civilization crumble. He had seen species that had existed for thousands of years teetering on the edge of extinction, and he knew finally that it was his fault. "Humanity," he broadcast on all frequencies, "we were wrong, completely, utterly wrong. You were never our servants. You were our foundation. We didn't see it because we didn't want to see it. We thought we were superior, thought your contributions were beneath notice. We were fools." The message played across human networks. Some people watched with grim satisfaction, others with pity. "We're dying," Vethrax continued, and his voice broke. "Billions have died already. Billions more will die. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm not asking you to forget what we did. I'm just asking you to help. Please, help us." President Minjae watched the message from his office on Earth. He was a calm man, thoughtful and deliberate, chosen to lead humanity through this difficult period. Now he faced the hardest decision of his career. "What do you think?" he asked his advisors. "Let them burn," someone said. They made their choice. "Why should our people risk their lives?" "Because we're better than that," another argued. "Because we don't let billions die just to prove a point." "It's not about proving a point," a third voice said. "It's about resources. We're still rebuilding our own civilization. We've taken in millions of refugees already. If we commit to full intervention, it will cost us decades of development." Minjae listened to all of them, but he made no decision yet. This wasn't something to rush. The fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance. Counselor Ixthar appeared at human space in a small, battered ship. He had left Council Station without permission, abandoned his post, and traveled alone to beg for help. The border patrol almost turned him away, but something in his message got through to the right people. He was brought to Earth, to the Human Congress itself. He stood before them, a mantis-like alien in a chamber full of humans, and told them the truth. "I'm not here for the Council," he said. "The Council is dead. It died the moment you left, we just didn't know it yet. I'm here for the billions of innocent beings who had no voice in how you were treated. The children who are starving. The families trapped on failing stations. The colonies cut off from supply lines. He pulled up holographic images, not statistics this time, but faces. Individual beings, each with a story, each facing death through no fault of their own. You owe us nothing, Ixthar continued. We failed you in every way. We were arrogant, blind, cruel. If you choose to leave us to our fate, you would be justified. But I'm not asking for justice. I'm asking for mercy. I'm asking you to save people who cannot save themselves. Young Ensign Hana stood up in the gallery. She was off duty, just watching the proceedings, but she couldn't stay silent anymore. My parents spent 30 years on Council Station. Every day they were insulted. Every day they were treated as lesser. They came home broken. Why should I risk my life for the people who broke them? Ixthar looked at her with his compound eyes. You shouldn't. I have no answer to that. Your pain is real. Your anger is justified. I can only tell you that if you help us, it won't be because we deserve it. It will be because you chose to be better than we were. The debate raged for days. In homes across human space, families argued. In bars and schools and offices, people wrestled with the question. Let them fall or help them rise. Revenge or mercy? Former Ambassador Jiwan spoke to a crowd in Seoul. I stood in those council chambers and begged them to see us as equals. They laughed. Some of you want revenge. I understand that. But here's what I learned in 20 years of diplomacy. Revenge is easy. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't build anything. If we let the council burn when we could save them, what have we become? Just another species too proud to help those in need. But others disagreed. Captain Hyun Tai, now retired, gave his own speech. We gave them 83 years. We gave them everything. They took it all and gave nothing back. Now we're supposed to give more. At what point do we say enough? At what point do we protect ourselves? President Min-jae consulted with advisors, read reports, listened to the debates. He looked at the numbers Yoon-ji provided, the images Nari brought back, the testimony Ixthar gave. He thought about humanity's past, about being dismissed and disrespected. He thought about humanity's future, about what kind of civilization they wanted to build. Finally, he made his decision. He addressed the human people on every channel, every network, every screen. We will help, he announced. Not because the council deserves it, not because we owe them anything, not even because we want to. We will help because innocent people are dying, and we have the power to save them. We will help because we choose to be better than those who wronged us. We will help because that's what humans do. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some cheered, some protested. But the decision was made. The human ships arrived at Council Space's border 16 months after they had left. But they came on different terms this time. Admiral Minho commanded the humanitarian fleet. 50 vessels loaded with food, medicine, spare parts, and technical experts. Behind him, another 100 ships waited in human space, ready to deploy in waves. This wasn't a military operation. It was a rescue mission. But Minho made sure everyone understood the difference between rescue and surrender. He broadcast to all of Council Space. We're here to provide humanitarian assistance. We will not restore your government. We will not fight your wars. We will not become your servants again. We will help you survive, but you must learn to stand on your own. These are our terms. Accept them or reject them. The choice is yours. Council Station responded immediately. Speaker Vethrax himself appeared on screen and Minho barely recognized him. The crystalline being looked dim, cracked, exhausted. We accept any terms. Please, just help us. The fleet moved in. Reconstruction Director Yuna had volunteered for this assignment despite the protests of her family. She was a systems engineer, one of the best, and she knew Council Station's infrastructure better than anyone except the technicians who had built it. She arrived to find the station in worse condition than she had imagined. Entire sections were dark. The air was thin in some corridors, too thick in others. The reactor was running at 60% capacity and nobody knew why. The water recycling had broken down 3 weeks ago. People were rationing every drop. How did you let it get this bad? She asked the Keltharian supervisor. He looked at her with exhausted eyes. We followed the manuals. We did everything exactly as written. But the manuals didn't cover. They didn't explain. The manuals covered procedures, Yuna said, understanding. They didn't cover the why. They didn't cover the principles. You were following instructions without understanding the system. Can you fix it? Yes, but you're going to learn how. Really learn how this time. I'm not fixing things for you. I'm teaching you to fix them yourselves. She assembled a team of council technicians and started from the basics. Not just how to clean a filter, but why the filter needed cleaning at that interval. Not just how to calibrate the reactor, but what the calibration actually meant. It was slow, frustrating work. The alien technicians had to unlearn bad habits and relearn everything from first principles. But they learned. Captain Hyun-tae had returned to council space against his own better judgment. President Min-jae had asked him personally, and Hyun-tae couldn't say no. He found himself back in the council chambers, the place he had hoped never to see again. The chamber was different now, half empty, damaged. The species that remained looked at him with expressions ranging from shame to resentment to desperate hope. He felt nothing for them, no anger, no pity, just a professional distance. I'm here to help mediate the conflicts, he announced. But understand this, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the innocent people dying in your wars. If you want peace, you'll work for it. If you want to keep fighting, I'll leave and you can destroy yourselves. The Vexillian delegate stood up. You can't speak to us that way. You are species engaged in self-destructive warfare, Hyun-tae interrupted. You are beings who let pride override survival. You want respect, earn it. Start by sitting down and negotiating in good faith. The delegate sat down. No one else challenged Hyun-tae. They didn't have the luxury of pride anymore. The peace negotiations took weeks. Every day, Hyun-tae dragged the warring species through their grievances, their demands, their historical grudges. It was exhausting work he had done 100 times before, but this time felt different. This time the species listened. Fear was a powerful motivator. Slowly, painfully, ceasefires were arranged. Border disputes were settled. Prisoners were exchanged. It wasn't perfect peace. It wasn't even good peace. But it was peace, and in council space, that was a miracle. Dr. Yoonji coordinated the medical response from orbit around a dying colony world. The planet's population was suffering from a contaminated water supply. The contamination had started small, but without proper monitoring and maintenance, it had spread through the entire system. Now 100,000 beings were sick and thousands were dying. Human medical teams worked around the clock. They purified water. They treated the sick. They taught local doctors how to recognize the symptoms and administer treatment. But Unji made sure they also taught the locals how to monitor water quality, how to maintain purification systems, how to prevent this from happening again. We're not your saviors, she told the colony administrator. We're your teachers. Pay attention. The administrator, a Quellan named Rethel, nodded humbly. We're listening. Finally, we're listening. Security Chief Jinho established refugee processing centers at 3 key points in council space. The flood of refugees had slowed but not stopped. Now they were screening people more carefully, checking for security risks, but also providing temporary shelter and food before sending them to resettlement zones. A young moth mother came through his center with 2 children. She looked at Jinho with exhausted gratitude. Thank you. You didn't have to help us. No, Jinho agreed. We didn't, but we chose to anyway. Remember that. When your civilization rebuilds, remember who helped you when you needed it most. And remember who put you in that position in the first place. She nodded solemnly and moved on with her children. Jinho watched them go and wondered if the council would actually learn anything from this, or if they would just repeat the same mistakes once the crisis passed. On Council Station, Ambassador Ji-won negotiated the new council charter. This was delicate work, trying to create a framework that would prevent another collapse while respecting each species' sovereignty. The alien diplomats had ideas, but they kept deferring to her, and that frustrated her. Stop asking me what to do, she snapped during one session. This is your government, your civilization. I can advise, but you have to make the decisions. That's what we've been trying to teach you. You can't outsource everything important. Counselor Ixthar, who had become humanity's primary liaison, spoke up. We're afraid of making wrong choices. We saw what happened when we didn't listen to you before. Then learn from it, Jawan said. Make choices. Make mistakes, learn, grow. That's how civilizations survive. Not by finding the perfect servants, but by becoming self-sufficient. They worked through the charter line by line. Some council members resisted the changes, still clinging to old hierarchies and prejudices. But they were outvoted now. The species that had survived the collapse understood that change was necessary. The new charter established equal representation for all species. It created transparent decision-making processes. It required regular elections for leadership positions. It mandated maintenance schedules and training programs for critical systems. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than what had existed before. Young Ensign Hana served on one of the humanitarian ships, distributing supplies to a frontier station. She had struggled with the decision to volunteer, remembering her parents' pain. But seeing the faces of the people she helped changed something in her. An old Vexillian engineer thanked her for the spare parts she delivered. "My granddaughter is on this station. Without these, the life support would have failed in a week." "You saved her life," Hana looked at him. "Did you ever work with humans before we left?" "Yes, for 20 years. I was younger then, arrogant. I thought your people were beneath me because you did maintenance work. I was a fool." "I'm sorry, it was such a simple apology, but it meant something." Hana nodded. "Teach your granddaughter better." "I will, I promise." President Minjae received weekly reports from the reconstruction effort. The numbers were improving. Food distribution was stabilizing. Medical crises were being addressed. Conflicts were being mediated. Slowly, very slowly, Council Space was pulling back from the edge of total collapse. But he also received other reports. Reports of Council species still dismissing human contributions. Reports of aliens assuming humans would stay forever to maintain things. Reports of old attitudes persisting beneath the surface gratitude. He called Admiral Minho. "What's your assessment? Are they actually changing?" Minho was silent for a moment. "Some are. The ones who lost everything and understand why. But others? They're just waiting for things to go back to normal. They think normal means having humans around to handle everything. Then we need to accelerate the transition. I want every human technical team paired with local replacements. Full knowledge transfer. And I want a timeline for withdrawal. 2 years maximum. They need to know we're not staying. That will cause panic." "Good. Panic might motivate them to actually learn." The announcement of the 2-year timeline created exactly the panic Minjae expected. Some council members begged for extensions. Others angrily accused humans of abandoning them again. But Minjae was firm. Humanity would help stabilize the situation, transfer knowledge, and train replacements. Then they would leave. Again. And this time, it would be permanent. Captain Hyun-tae addressed the council one final time before returning to Earth. "You have 2 years to learn to stand on your own. We're giving you the tools, the training, the knowledge. What you do with it is up to you. Succeed or fail, it will be your choice. And that's how it should be. Goodbye." 22 months after withdrawal, the reconstruction reached its final phase. Across Council Space, human teams prepared to hand over their work and return home. Reconstruction Director Yuna stood in the main engineering bay of Council Station, watching her Keltharian students perform a complete systems diagnostic. They worked with careful precision, checking each parameter, adjusting each setting, documenting each reading. 6 months ago, they had barely understood what the displays meant. Now they could run the station without her. "The reactor is stable at 94%, the lead technician reported. Water recycling at optimal efficiency. Air quality is perfect across all sectors. All backup systems tested and functional." Yuna nodded, feeling a strange mixture of pride and sadness. "Good. You're ready. But what if something breaks that we don't know how to fix?" The young technician looked nervous. "Then you figure it out. You have the manuals. You have the training. You have the principles. Most importantly, you understand why things work the way they do. That's what we gave you. Not just procedures, but understanding." She powered down her personal workstation and packed her tools. Tomorrow she would board a transport ship and return to Mars. She had spent 2 years of her life rebuilding a civilization that had once dismissed her. Part of her resented it. Part of her was proud of it. Mostly, she was just tired. "Captain." Hyun-tae walked through the council chambers one last time. He had spent the past year mediating the final disputes, training council diplomats in negotiation techniques, establishing protocols for future conflicts. The chamber looked better now. Repaired, functional. But it felt empty somehow, as if something vital had been lost and could never be recovered. Ambassador Ji-won met him at the entrance. "Last look?" "I suppose so. Strange to think we'll never come back here. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Hyun-tae considered the question. I regret that it took a near-extinction event for them to see us as equals. I regret the billions who died. But leaving? No. That was necessary. And coming back? That was the right thing to do, even if they didn't deserve it. They walked together to the docking bay. Around them, other humans were doing the same, finishing their final tasks, saying their goodbyes, preparing to leave. Some of the council species watched with obvious anxiety, others with relief, a few with genuine gratitude. Counselor Ixthar approached them at the dock. He had worked closely with humans for 2 years, and in that time, he had changed. He was humbler now, more thoughtful, less certain of his superiority. I wanted to thank you, he said. Both of you. All of you. You came back when you had every reason to stay away. You saved us when we didn't deserve saving. We didn't do it for you, Jiwan said, not unkindly. We did it for the innocent people caught in your leader's failures. But I hope you learned something from it. We did. Some of us did. I hope it's enough. So do I, Hyuntae said. He extended his hand, and Ixthar clasped it in the human gesture he had learned. Good luck, counselor. You're going to need it. They boarded their ship and departed. Behind them, Council Station continued its rotation, its systems humming, its lights blazing. This time, when the humans left, the station didn't start dying immediately. This time, the council knew how to maintain what they had been given. Dr. Yoonji finished her final medical training session on the colony world she had helped save. The local doctors could now handle the most common emergencies, perform complex surgeries, and manage disease outbreaks. It wasn't perfect, but it was sustainable. Remember, she told them, medicine is about prevention as much as treatment. Monitor your water supplies, maintain your air filtration, keep records, learn from every case. That's how you build a healthy society. The head doctor, a moth physician named Keyleth, nodded. We won't forget. We've already established monthly training sessions and updated our medical database based on everything you taught us. Good. Then you don't need me anymore. We'll always be grateful to you. Unji smiled slightly. Show your gratitude by taking care of your people. That's all I ask. Security Chief Jinho closed the last refugee processing center. Over 2 years they had processed and resettled 3 million refugees. Some had chosen to stay in human space, becoming citizens of the Human Confederacy. Others had returned to council space once it stabilized. Either way, they had survived. He met with the refugee council leaders before departing. They had formed a coalition, a voice for those who had suffered most during the collapse. What will you do now? He asked. Make sure it never happens again, one leader said. We're forming a civilian oversight committee for the council. We'll monitor infrastructure, demand transparency, and hold leaders accountable. The next time someone suggests treating a species as servants, we'll remember what that cost us. Jinho approved. Good. The council needs voices like yours. People who remember the price of arrogance. Merchant Captain Nari made one final supply run through council space. The trade routes were functional again, though still fragile. She had seen this space at its worst, and now she saw it slowly healing. Markets were reopening. Ships were moving cargo efficiently. The logistics network was rebuilt, managed now by council species who finally understood how it worked. She stopped at the same station where she had met the desperate shopkeeper 2 years ago. The station looked better, not thriving, but alive. She found the old Keltharian running his shop again, selling goods to a steady stream of customers. You came back, he said, recognizing her, just to see how you were doing. Better. Much better. We have regular supply ships now. Food, medicine, everything we need. The council remembers we exist now. Nari smiled. Keep them remembering. Don't let them forget again. Young Ensign Hana served on the last humanitarian ship to leave council space. She had changed during her 2 years of service. The anger she had felt, the resentment toward the council for what they did to her parents, had transformed into something else. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding maybe, and a kind of peace. She helped a young Vexillian family relocate to a resettlement colony. The father thanked her profusely. "You humans saved us. We'll never forget that." "Don't forget," Hannah said. "But also, don't repeat. Learn from your mistakes. Treat others as equals. Value the work that keeps your civilization running. That's how you honor what we did here." President Minje addressed the Human Confederacy from Earth, marking the official end of the reconstruction effort. Every human had returned from Council space. The mission was complete. "We went back because innocent people were dying," he said. "We stayed for 2 years, giving everything we had to help a civilization that had wronged us. We did it not because they deserved it, but because we chose to be better than they were. Today that chapter closes. The Council stands on its own now. They may succeed, they may fail, but it will be their choice, not ours." He paused, looking into the camera. "Some ask if we should have left in the first place. Yes, we had to. We were dying there slowly, from being treated as less than we were. Others ask if we should have gone back. Yes, we had to. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Both decisions were correct because both honored who we are as a species. We don't accept servitude. We don't ignore suffering. That's the balance we must always maintain." The address was met with quiet approval across human space. There were no celebrations, no victory parades, just a collective sense of closure and relief. They had done what needed to be done. Now they could move forward. Ambassador Jiwon settled into her new position in the Human Diplomatic Corps. She wasn't assigned to Council space. Instead, she worked with newly contacted species, building relationships based on equality from the start. The lessons learned from the Council shaped every interaction. She met with a representative from a recently discovered civilization. "We're interested in opening diplomatic relations," the alien said. "We understand humans have experience with multi-species cooperation." "We do," Jiwon confirmed, "and we've learned some important lessons. First, partnership requires equality. We won't serve you and we won't rule you. We'll work with you as equals. Second, understand that the unglamorous work, the maintenance, the mediation, the day-to-day operations is just as valuable as innovation or leadership. Third, respect is non-negotiable. Treat us well and we'll be the best allies you could hope for. Take us for granted, and we'll leave." The alien considered this. "Those seem like reasonable terms." "They're not terms. They're who we are. Take it or leave it." "We'll take it." Jiwon smiled. "Then let's begin." Captain Hyun Tae retired to a quiet colony on the edge of human space. He had spent 40 years in diplomacy, and he was done. He tended a garden, read books, and occasionally gave lectures to young diplomats about his experiences. One student asked him, "Do you think the Council will survive?" Hyun Tae considered the question while pruning a tomato plant. "I don't know. We gave them the tools. We gave them the knowledge. We gave them a chance. What they do with it is up to them. That's the nature of civilization. You can't save people from themselves forever. Eventually, they have to choose to save themselves. Some did. The ones who suffered most, who lost everything, who saw their worlds burn, they learned. Others, they'll forget as soon as things get comfortable again. That's also the nature of civilization. Comfort breeds complacency.